In the heart of Agbola, a small village nestled by the Iron River, there lived a woman named Doya. She was no ordinary woman. To the villagers, she was the Seer Who Knows All. Legends of her power spread like wildfire, reaching neighboring villages and faraway lands. It was said that Doya could peer into the deepest recesses of the human heart, unraveling secrets that others had long buried in silence. People traveled from miles away, hoping to receive her wisdom, her blessings, and perhaps a glimpse of the future. Doya's fame grew over the years, and with it, her influence. The villagers believed she had been chosen by the gods for a higher purpose. They marveled at her ability to predict events, to heal the sick with a mere touch, and to guide them through life's hardships. Whenever there was a festival, Doya led the songs and prayers, invoking the divine with her angelic voice. Her connection to the gods seemed undeniable, and her powers were regarded as a gift from the heavens. But despite the reverence with which she was held, Doya's rise to power was not as mystical as it appeared. She was born to humble farmers, ordinary folk who worked the land to feed their families. Her early years were spent in devotion to the gods, singing praises, and praying for the well-being of her community. Doya was never one to shy away from hard work. Her parents often spoke of how she had always been different, a child with a deep sense of faith and an understanding of the world beyond her years. As the years passed, Doya's reputation grew, and so did her ambitions. She began to notice that power, true power, did not come from merely offering prayers and leading festivals. The world was a harsh place, and if she were to make a lasting impact, she needed more than just the blessings of the gods. She began to question the limits of her abilities. What if there was a way to extend her influence? What if she could unlock powers that no one else had ever dreamed of? These thoughts took root in her heart, and she began to yearn for something more. The desire for power was a dangerous thing. But it was a desire that could not be ignored. In the quiet of her thoughts, Doya began to seek out those who could offer her the guidance she sought. Little did she know that this quest would lead her down a path from which there would be no return. One fateful day, Doya received an invitation to a secret gathering. It was an event whispered about in hushed tones by the elders, a meeting of spiritual leaders from various lands. The gathering would take place in the ancient forest of Yomi, a place believed to hold the keys to the universe's mysteries. Doya, always hungry for knowledge and power, felt that this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. Without hesitation, she set out for the forest, her heart racing with anticipation. As she arrived at the clearing deep within Yomi, Doya was greeted by a circle of wise men and women. Their faces were weathered, their eyes sharp and knowing. In the center of the circle stood a man named Bako, a renowned oracle whose prophecies had shaped the destinies of kings and empires. Bako's presence was commanding, and his voice carried the weight of centuries of wisdom. Doya could feel the power emanating from him, and she knew that this was no ordinary meeting. It was during this gathering that Bako whispered a secret to Doya that would change the course of her life forever. True power lies not in devotion, he said, his voice low and enigmatic, but in sacrifice. His words echoed in her mind, and she could feel the gravity of their meaning. Bako spoke of a covenant with the River of Secrets, an underwater kingdom that held boundless power, but it came at a steep price. To gain such power, one had to give up something of immense value, something that could never be reclaimed. Doya's mind raced with possibilities. She had always believed that devotion to the gods was the path to true strength, but Bako's words opened her eyes to a different reality. If power could be obtained through sacrifice, perhaps she could attain the greatness she had always desired. Her heart beat faster as Bako continued to speak, his voice weaving a tapestry of temptation and promise. Bako's words ignited a fire within Doya. She knew that she had to take the next step, to find the River of Secrets and offer her sacrifice. The path ahead was unclear, but she felt a sense of destiny pulling her forward. She was no longer content with simply leading festivals and healing the sick. She wanted more. She wanted the kind of power that would make her legend, the kind of power that would give her control over the forces of the universe. And she was willing to pay any price to achieve it. On a moonless night, Doya made her way to the Iron River, guided by the secret knowledge that Baku had shared with her. The river, which had long been regarded with awe and fear by the villagers, held a power that few truly understood. It was said that the waters of the Iron River flowed from the depths of the earth, carrying with them the whispers of forgotten gods and ancient secrets. Doya's heart raced as she approached the water, the moon hidden behind a veil of clouds. She could feel the pull of the river, calling to her, beckoning her to step into its depths. With trembling hands, Doya began chanting the incantation that Baku had taught her. The words were ancient, their meaning lost to all but a few. As she spoke the final verse, the waters of the river began to stir. The surface of the water rippled, and from its depths emerged a figure, one that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. It was a serpent, its scales like polished ebony, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The serpent's voice slithered into Doya's mind, its words both seductive and chilling. "You seek power," the serpent hissed, its voice echoing in the stillness of the night. "And I can grant it. But you must give something of great value, something that you hold dear. Only then will you receive the power you desire." The serpent's gaze pierced through Doya, as if it could see into the very soul of her being. It knew her desires, her fears, and her weaknesses. It understood that she was ready to make a sacrifice, one that would change her forever. Doya stood in silence, the weight of the serpent's words pressing down on her. She knew what was being asked of her. The sacrifice was not merely a trinket or an offering, it was something far more precious. She thought of her past, her childhood, her parents, and her community. She thought of the one thing that had always been hers, the one thing that she had never been willing to part with, the gift of motherhood. It was the bond that had defined her, the connection to the earth and the gods that had shaped her life. With trembling hands, Doya made her decision. She offered her gift of motherhood to the serpent, a sacrifice that would bind her to the river forever. The serpent accepted the offering with a hiss of approval, and in that moment, Doya felt a transformation unlike anything she had ever experienced. Her body began to shift, to change. Her legs fused into a glistening tail, and her eyes gleamed with an unearthly light. She had become something both human and serpent, a creature of dual nature, bound to the river and to the serpent queen. In the days that followed her transformation, Doya returned to Agbola, her body altered, and her powers greatly enhanced. The villagers were stunned by the changes they saw in her. No longer just a healer and a prophetess, Doya had become a being of extraordinary abilities. She could command the elements, summon winds and rain with a wave of her hand, and heal even the most grievous wounds with a mere touch. Her eyes had taken on a supernatural glow, and she could see into the hearts and minds of those around her. Doya's reputation grew even more, and with it, her power. She no longer needed to rely on festivals and prayers to maintain her influence. She could now control the elements and bend the will of others to her desire. People came from far and wide, seeking her guidance, hoping for her blessings, and offering sacrifices to maintain her favor. Doya was no longer just a seer, she was a goddess in the eyes of the villagers. But with this newfound power came a growing sense of entitlement. Doya began to demand greater sacrifices, her desires becoming more insatiable. Livestock, gold, precious heirlooms, nothing was too great to offer in exchange for her blessings. She used enchanted mirrors, given to her followers, to reveal their spiritual flaws, though in truth, the mirrors were tools of manipulation. They allowed Doya to spy on her congregation, uncovering their deeper secrets and using them to her advantage. The villagers, once devoted to her, began to feel the weight of their sacrifices. What had once been a community built on faith and trust now became a place of fear and exploitation. Doya's power seemed limitless, and those who spoke out against her were quickly silenced. It was clear that she had become more than a simple healer, she had become a force to be reckoned with. But even as Doya's power grew, cracks began to form in the illusion she had so carefully built. The villagers began to question the authenticity of her miracles, the truth behind her blessings. And in the shadows, one woman named Adanna was determined to uncover the truth. Adanna had heard the stories of Doya's miracles and was drawn to the village of Agbola by a desperate need for help. Her son, a young boy who had fallen ill with a mysterious ailment, had been given little hope by the healers of her village. When she heard of Doya's powers, she knew that the legendary seer might be her son's last chance. But as Adanna arrived in Agbola and saw Doya's displays of power, something did not sit right with her. Adanna had lived a life of hardship and survival. She had lost her husband in a tragic accident, and now she was a widow raising 2 children on her own. She had learned to trust her instincts, and as she watched Doya perform her so-called miracles, Adanna's gut told her that something was wrong. The blind man who could suddenly see, the crippled child who had miraculously healed, Adanna had seen these people before. She knew their stories, and they did not add up. As she spent more time in Agbola, Adanna grew more and more suspicious. She began to notice inconsistencies in Doya's actions, small things that others overlooked. The blessed water that Doya sold at exorbitant prices was nothing more than river water with herbs. Adanna overheard Doya's aides laughing about how easily they could deceive the villagers, and the more she learned, the more determined she became to expose the truth. One night, as Doya made her way to the iron river under the cover of darkness, Adanna followed her. She hid in the reeds, watching from a distance as Doya stepped into the water. To her shock, Doya's body began to transform, her legs fusing into a serpent's tail, her eyes glowing with an eerie light. The serpent queen emerged from the water, wrapping itself around Doya and whispering in her ear. Adanna's heart raced as she watched this dark transformation unfold. She knew that she had uncovered the truth. Doya was not the divine being she claimed to be, she was a deceiver, a woman who had sold her soul for power. And Adanna vowed to expose her, no matter the cost. The next morning, Adanna gathered her courage and began telling the villagers what she had seen. At first, they dismissed her as a madwoman, a grieving mother clutching at straws. But Adanna refused to back down. She spoke to anyone who would listen, recounting her experiences and the things she had witnessed. Slowly, others began to listen. They too had noticed strange things about Doya's miracles, things that didn't add up. Adanna's persistence paid off as more and more villagers came forward with stories of their own. A man who had paid for a blessing only to find that his troubles had worsened. A woman whose livestock had been taken as part of a sacrifice, never to return. The more stories that surfaced, the clearer it became that Doya's power was built on lies and manipulation. Finally, the elders of the village called for a gathering. Doya, sensing the growing rebellion, stood before them, her eyes flashing with anger. "You dare challenge me," she hissed, her voice laced with venom. "Do you not fear the wrath of the gods?" But Adanna stood tall, her voice steady. "The gods I serve do not demand lies and sacrifices," she said, her words ringing with truth. "They stand for honesty and justice." With the help of the villagers, Adanna exposed the enchanted mirrors for what they truly were, tools of deception. As the mirrors were shattered, the truth was revealed, and Doya's hold over the village was broken. Furious, Doya fled to the Iron River, where the Serpent Queen waited to take her away. The village of Agbola was forever changed after Doya's departure. Freed from the grip of her false miracles, the villagers began to rebuild their lives. They no longer lived in fear of Doya's power, and slowly, the memory of her reign began to fade. But the lessons of her rise and fall remained, etched into the hearts of the people. Adanna, the woman who had dared to challenge Doya, became a symbol of courage and integrity. She taught the villagers to trust in themselves and their community, and to question the false prophets who sought to deceive them. Her bravery inspired others to speak out against injustice and to fight for the truth. The Iron River, once feared as a source of dark power, became a symbol of the dangers of unchecked ambition. It was a reminder of the consequences of sacrificing one's soul for power, and the importance of standing up for what is right. The villagers would never forget the lessons they had learned, and they vowed to protect their village from the dangers of false prophets and deceit. As for Doya, she and the Serpent Queen disappeared into the depths of the Iron River, never to be seen again. But the stories of her rise and fall lived on, serving as a warning to all who sought power at any cost. Thanks for watching. If you had fun, learned something, or just enjoyed the vibes, please hit the like button, drop a comment, and subscribe. It's like planting a tiny seed. Your support helps us grow into a giant tree of awesome content. Let's make this journey epic together.